Good morning. This is Kim De Silva from Language of Relationships, and welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app from the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 forward. Hello again, and welcome to our special guest today, Erin. Erin Vogt, by the way. So that if you're wondering how to pronounce her last name, as she told me, very just like the word vote, Vote, that's how you pronounce it. So you got it now. Um, but Erin, we are here to talk about lots of different things, including not just running your own business, which is something that you and I have in common, but running our own businesses while managing the children, while, you know, being married and all the things that come with that, plus having ADHD on top of everything else, because your to-do list was not long enough.
Right.
um, so Erin, tell us a little bit about, what is it that you do?
Well, thanks for having me on this awesome show, Kim. I appreciate it. So my name's Erin Vogt. I live in Alberta, Canada. I'm married, have been for 15 years, and I have two girls. They are 9 and 12. Um, Most of my career, I was in the administration and social work world. So I have spent a lot of time meeting with various people in 3 different provinces. Um, and it was around December 2019 when I realized I needed a shift. I ended up taking a stress leave from my job, and it was right before COVID and lockdowns. It was it was kind of divine intervention in that way because it was the time for my shift. And when all of that came down in March of 2020, I realized I'd always been very interested in not just personal development, but because of my education, my background, and just this like zest to work for myself in some way. I came from a farming background in a small village in southern Alberta, and we didn't live the 9 to 5 life.
No.
And I just was like, there's flexibility that my personality needs. And when I discovered that I could do coaching, I'd actually been looking into it for a few months because of a sponsored ad on Facebook, ironic. And it just, one
Works.
thing led to another. Yeah, it's funny how that happens, right? And at the time, the world was crumbling. The dollar was insane. My husband was like, you want to do what? You want to get into coaching? What? Like, and he's like, have you seen what's going on in the economy? Like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's my time. And the reason that I say that is because, I mean, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 35 and anxiety, but I'd lived with it probably my whole life. And I felt like I was behind the 8 ball all the time. I was in various positions where, just hot mess life.
Yeah.
And letting people walk all over me, not taking ownership of a lot of things, kind of in victim mode. And then when I discovered I'd been doing counseling as a client for years and years, like I'm going to say close to 2 decades.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I hired my first coach, it was right after during my stress leave, a local woman here. And she helped me immensely. And I realized I was like, oh, coaching's different than counseling in the sense that there's accountability.
Action.
Yes. And intention and learning about all those, action-based words. And I am one of those people. I was like, I've been studying personal development since I was 18, probably even before that. Why is it that it's so hard to implement these things? And I was just living in this kind of this fog of, well, I'm not a corporate ladder climber.
Yeah.
I'm in the nonprofit world. I love to help people, but I'm not confident. And when you go through postpartum depression, which I did twice, you're like, eventually, I think you hit your stride. It hits you in your late 40s. I've got a lot of clients that's the case.
Mhm.
And you realize this, I get to do something for me.
Yeah.
And if mom is happier, the whole family is happier.
Seriously.
Our
Yes.
marriage is happier. Things flow a little better. And so we took a big risk in starting up something during COVID, and
Yeah.
it's really paid off because I have the flexibility now to take my kids to and from school, run them to their activities, be home during the day. And also, yeah, it's crazy. You know how much running a business is
Yeah.
hour wise, and
Mhm.
you're wearing so many hats. I always joke, I'm like, I probably have 16 different hats. And half the time they're stuck and lost in the closet. Like, I don't know, right? So 4 years into this now, I think I've got kind of a better idea of what I'm doing. I definitely have worked on it. But the reason that I niched into ADHD is because I was seeing a lot of patterns online and themes of women who were stuck in procrastination mode, and also they just feel like we just don't fit in to the mold. Even if it's the corporate world, there's one thing, but then when you're online, it's like the wild, wild west in the online world.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And if you're not really gregarious and kind of a bulldog, how do you make it work? But there's softer skills required for that. And so when I was coaching, I just was using my natural soft skills, and then I would kind of come out with like my fierce tendencies as a coach, and I was getting incredible results from my clients, but I was really afraid to promote myself, and I was afraid to scale because I was like, well, what if I let other people down?
Right. Right. Right.
And so this is the longest intro ever. I just realized, holy smokes. But
That's fine. Lots of things to put down in there.
but that's really what's happened. So 4 years in, yeah, I'm now supporting women who run businesses who live with ADHD, and primarily moms, because it's a trifecta. You have motherhood 24/7. You have ADHD 24/7. And you got your business 24/7. So something is
All happening. All
the
at once.
binding part of that. And I think when you can honor and acknowledge ADHD and see it as that strength because of the creativity, the hyper focus, the
Mhm.
spontaneity, and there's so many elements to it that my ADHD contributes
Yeah.
good. When women can see that instead of looking at it like, I'm so far behind, I'm so unorganized, um,
Mhm.
and living in a deficit, I think the
Mhm.
biggest win is seeing that mindset shift with my clients and my peers, and just seeing people stretch. Because when you're online, I mean, I was just looking at your intro, right? You have this beautiful picture of you, and I know you're in Trinidad, I'm in Canada, and it's like, this is amazing, right? Like, you have your own show, and it's always the thing. Like, I don't know if you ever dreamt about being on Ellen or anything like that when I was younger, but I was like, I loved that stuff, and I thought, now we can make that happen.
Now we can make it happen.
Like,
Yeah.
this whole process is with Spanglish, and I
Yeah.
don't know how it all works, but podcasting and YouTube and everything, I mean, everyone gets their chance to speak, and I think it's really beautiful. And it's time that women, especially women with ADHD, start to see that like they have a space in here too, not just being random funny TikTokers, but actually
That's it.
full-fledged experienced and successful business owners.
Exactly. And there's so many stories to be told, and they're different stories, but yet still the same. And there is so much power in that, in realizing that you are not alone in these struggles, that these are actually normal struggles that many people go through. And
Yeah.
that's a good thing. Not so that you can all wallow together, but because if it's something that so many other people are going through, then that means there are solutions and
Yeah,
there are coping mechanisms for all of it. So
absolutely. Yeah, you nailed it.
now let's talk about some of those coping mechanisms, because I was just looking again at so Erin spoke in my Facebook group a couple months ago. Um, a couple weeks ago. Anyway, one of the things that she shared with our audience there was her giveaway, which is called 10 minutes to calm your ADHD mind. So I kind of want to touch on that now. And I mean, we have so many things to talk about too, but though, but exactly that, right? You told us about yourself. You told us about, how you started, where you came from. We've been talking about how we have all of these different aspects of our lives just kind of creeping in on us and sometimes pushing down. And that we do need at different points to find that space of calm. So I don't know, maybe you could share a little bit about what inspired you to create that, how it works, anything
Sure,
like
you bet. I realized that time is
that.
definitely something for me that was always this elusive struggle.
Yeah.
And if you give someone a tight deadline and okay, you have an hour to figure this out, it's the adrenaline rush around it. It's perhaps the dopamine drive, like it's kind of a fix, but we get stuff done because of deadlines. And so I often thought, like, sometimes I had clients say, this is something that I've been working on for 4 weeks, but I actually sat down and did it, and it took me 10 minutes. And I thought, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you into action and focused on that one thing that you need to do. But before you do that, let's focus your mind and get clear on what's all up there.
Yeah.
Because it was actually my very first college course that I took. I'm going to date myself. It was 1999. And I remember my English prof was like, we're going to brain dump. And I was like, brain dump? What the heck does that mean? I love the idea. And I mean, I'd always journaled.
Yeah.
But this is more than that. It's taking everything that's in your head. So for instance, this is coming from someone with ADHD at 7 a.m. with a dog that's about to Zoom bomb us, by the way. So it's going to say, like, I'm going on this podcast. I'm really excited. It's got like a big reach. I got to do my hair. My foot is itchy. I should have made my bed because I'm committed to doing that. And I didn't. And I really hope that we can get our winter tires on. How many conversations in my head just went on that had nothing to do with each other, right? So I know that you have darting thoughts going on like this with ADHD. And so you can take this booklet essentially and walk yourself through it, because here's the deal. You know that there are themes and patterns in your thoughts. You just can't see them because they're not on paper. So I have this guide that helps you with that, and you take hold of that. And the reason it's only 10 minutes is you start it with 2 minutes of just calm breathing. Getting into a space, just closing your eyes, put a timer on your phone. We all have our phones. Just breathe and just get centered if you can, even though your mind's racing. And then write for about 3 minutes. And then you're going to go through some questions for another 5 minutes. And that's how it's 10 minutes to figure out your next step. And these question sequences walk you through, and it's like basically, okay, what patterns did you notice? I want you to walk away from your sheet, come back and like circle some things. What's my mind keep trying to tell me?
Yeah.
Is it to do with my kids? Is it to do with, what they're struggling with at school? Is that really weighing on me? Is something going on with the teacher? Or is it something to do with, like, I keep screwing up meals? Why are we having frozen pizza again? Or it could be something as simple as, like, why does it take me forever to just get the clothes out of the dryer? Right? Or can I just put my phone down and stop scrolling when it's my free time and I'm wasting my free time? It could be anything, or something to do with your marriage, right? And you'll see those patterns, and it's amazing what comes out. It's basically like venting to a girlfriend, but you have it on paper so you can take a look at it and be like, okay, obviously this is an issue. How the heck am I going to deal with it? And one of my last questions on that guide is, you have 20 minutes to figure this out. What's your step? Because I have had clients meet with me and tell me there's this elusive thing. It's like, I'm going to try and break down ADHD for you.
What?
So
Please do. Yeah, go ahead.
the vacuum is in the middle of the living room, and it's been there. Today's Wednesday. Let's say it's been there since Sunday. And I know that just grabbing the cord and wrapping it up and putting the vacuum upstairs in the closet would take all of 3 minutes. But for some reason, we will walk by that living room 680 times. And each time, instead of taking action, we will just tell ourselves, that's crappy that I didn't do it. I had a client, I'm just going to say this, talk about a fork that was on her floor. And I was like, what? And it was like, and we actually did a group call about this fork, and people were like, yeah, it's the thing. And because it becomes a part of the environment, you don't notice it. It just sits there. And then your kids think that's normal, right? And so this guide is basically going to get you out of that headspace of, I'm not good enough to do what I need to do, because I have these type A friends that are just go-getters. And oh man, if they have a paper they got to do for school, or they have a blog that they have to get out every week, or they're scheduling their content. And meanwhile, we're back here spiraling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard on the psyche. It's also really hard on our self-esteem. And then it breaks down our confidence. And so that guide was one of the first ones I came up with when I started coaching. So I was like, this is generally what we talk about in our sessions, is breaking free from this spiral and procrastination. And also realizing that, yeah, you absolutely get to clear out what's going on in your mind. Because we're so quick to consume, Kim, that we don't realize what's already up there.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, so one of the things you talked about just now was that breaking down of our confidence. And I noticed that you tacked it on as well at that point where, you talked about looking at our type A personality friends and that comparisonitis that we sometimes sucked into. And I'm just wondering if that is also part of what plays into imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, great point. Great point. Because especially online. I mean, I network all the time, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do. I get to meet, beautiful people of all waves and backgrounds and connections, and you hear what they've accomplished, or you see what they've done, or their funnel is rocking and rolling because they have it set up for you to
Set up, exactly. Oh my gosh, because it's set up.
And they're so consistent on social media. And you're like, when's the last time I posted in my group? Because I didn't schedule my posts. And then, so comparisonitis is a form of imposter. I consider it's that judge.
Mm-hmm.
It's judging yourself. And actually, the best, I just did a presentation on this in a summit about imposter syndrome, I compared it to Inside Out, the movie.
Right.
Because you know how there's those characters in Riley's brain, and at the first one, it was fear, anger, joy, sadness, and disgust. And in that way, we can actually work with the different characters that we have, giving us information in our minds, telling them, okay, I understand fear that you've been here all this time, but now it's time for you to sit down and let, the bold, courageous side of you show up. Right. And I loved that movie so much because it wasn't just all about joy running, the headquarters there. Yeah. Sadness had her place in there. Anger had his place there. And even disgust. Yeah. There's times where we have to honor those parts of us, but then you have to stretch and move past what's uncomfortable. And I think the best gift that someone with ADHD is given is that stretch. Not because we can't handle it. It's just most people combine the thoughts that they're stuck in anxiety, or they're spiraling, or they're squirreling. I want you to think about all the times that you were wildly successful. Like maybe you're really good at baking cakes and decorating them, and you're the person that people come to when they want to, decorate a cake for their kid. But you do it on the side, and you just are so hyper focused on getting it. It's kind of a perfection thing, but it's a pride thing. And you're like, I get to do this.
Correct.
Maybe that's your thing. I want you to recognize how strong that skill is for you, and that's your zone of genius. So instead of looking at it as this is an imposter because, oh my gosh, I can't make a really great, stir fry or casserole, or I can't even meal prep on time. But yeah, you can do other things. I meet people all the time that say they're really unorganized.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, yeah, but you're incredible with your kids. You go to the park with your kids without it being a chore. You take them swimming. You do all the fun things. You're a fun mom, right?
Yeah.
I don't love play because I'm not really good at it. My mind is always in like business mode. I'm always thinking about the next thing. And the other thing that sucks is that content creation is always in the back of your mind. And my kids are just like, are you really filming this? And I'm like, I honestly have to, I don't want to, but this is what my brand is about. Like, I want to show that my kids know how to do dishes. I haven't posted that one yet, but the other day, like my daughter it was a baby day, and she was downstairs scrubbing away at the dishes. Yesterday, my kids did the laundry. They made brownies. They played outside. I had 5 calls yesterday, and I came down and I was like, Cassie's like, do you want some grilled cheese? She put it in the fridge for me. I didn't eat until like 2:30. And I'm like, I've realized that I've been able to systematize my life, and this is the results of that. But your kids are always watching.
Yeah.
So the ones that I really want to compare myself to are the person that I was before,
Right.
and the person I am today. It's not about what my peers are doing. I could celebrate and rah them and support them, but I don't need to compare. Like my bestie, Katie, is incredible at putting together summits and virtual series. But she's also an introvert. And so she looks at what I'm able to do in certain ways and just be out there. And then there's other times where, maybe there's some things that aren't her strongest suit, right?
Yeah.
So everyone has their imposter. But with ADHD, I feel like it's emphasized because we already feel like we're masked.
Mm-hmm.
And in society, we've had to mask ourselves our whole life until we really until we take that step to unmask. And I hate the word mask, you know why, but it really is true. And I used to look back at my journal entries and I literally feel like I'm being suffocated by a mask, because on the outside, I'm out there smiling away and, everything's tickety boo. And the inside, like our house is crumbling. I'm yelling at my kids. My husband and I are fighting. I am not spending time with him. I'm projecting. I'm miserable. I'm hormonal. I'm sad. And our family has gone through various bouts of depression and anxiety. And my husband and I both are prone to it and have lived with it. And it's something that, we worry about for our kids. So we're very proactive with our mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that alone, awareness of what is going on for you really does help break down that imposter.
Right. Exactly. So, right, bringing it down to what is happening for you, and that's the whole thing, right? Imposter syndrome. Sometimes we suffer from it more when we are looking outwards and we're not thinking about us and our personal journey, which is going to be different. And and I want to just kind of make a comment here, because this is something Erin and I talked about in the past. She uses the word grit. All right. So we talk about giving yourself grace, but one of the things that we're also talking about is that this is not making excuses for ourselves. All right, because I think sometimes it's a fine line, because we get to that
Mhm.
stage where it's like, oh well, this is just how I am, and it's okay. Everyone says now there's a certain amount of that is healthy for us,
Yeah,
but then there's also that moment where the grit has to kick in,
totally.
and then we start to do the things. So it's always a bit of both. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why, I know, Erin, you said you ended up really attracted to coaching, and I suspect that was one of my attractions too, when I connected with my coach, who was just
Yeah.
let me vent all the things that was going wrong. And it's like, well, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, what do you mean do? Well, you can't just sit here complaining about things all the time, right? Say what? So, and that's it, right? That's where we get to that point of, what can we do? Yes, I'm living in a space where I am uncomfortable. Yes, I'm living in a space where I have to battle with these mental challenges, these physical challenges, time challenges. But what am I going to do? Is there anything that I can do? And yes, there is,
Mhm.
you know. I mean,
Totally.
yeah, you can tell me, like, when clients come to you, like, what do you see as, like, what's their biggest issue? Like, why does somebody sit there and be like, fine, like, okay, great, I know now I need Erin. Like, what is it that makes them finally come to you?
I think one of the big things is they've generally gone through some sort of counseling or therapy, and they've realized that they want to take it further. They've maybe even worked with a coach before, but they want to go deeper with it. So from a transformational method, you know, I go deep with my clients,
Right.
but they want to do more than just organize their pantry. They want to understand why it is that they're having 20 years of issue with organizing their pantry, or if they even paid someone to come in and fix it for them, why it keeps going back. And so, pattern shifting, habits, and then also to do with our health. I'm a big health nut. And I feel like when you have a holistic view of this and you include ADHD and you see it as a strength, I feel like that's kind of where my brand is going. I actually had a photo shoot the other day and I used Penn Holderness's book. You know the Holderness family?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ADHD is awesome. And I was like, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I love this book. And so like I took pictures with it. It's like ADHD is awesome because everything they talk about in that book, it's all about, okay, we acknowledge that there are some shortcomings, but these are the really great things about it. And then it gets into, and I've done so much research about ADHD with Dr. Edward Hallowell and Dr. Russell Barkley, and you know, the ones who really know this inside and out. And it's fascinating to see that we're changing the conversation around ADHD in that way. And I meet people, like I have some clients that are in their 50s. I meet people, like some peers of mine are 60 years old getting diagnosed.
Oh wow.
When they know that a lot of other people come to me and they're like, I've never really got diagnosed, but I have a feeling that I am. And sometimes they just want to book a call and explore, like, what do you live with? It
Yeah.
sounds like this maybe is me. They've basically let their self-care go to the side.
Right.
So I don't call myself like a self-care coach, but I really emphasize that,
Yeah.
because I know what it's like to try and crawl out of burnout. I've
Yeah.
been through it multiple times and it is not fun. And so I like to talk about preventing burnout. I talk about, you know, panic attacks. I talk about the real things about vulnerability and shame. But then I also talk about the fun things and what you can do. And I
Right.
want to help people remember what their strengths are, because it was just like kind of like social work in a way. Let me say, I was one of those, I was a rebel social worker because I was a coach. I wasn't someone that was going to listen to your excuses all day.
Right. Yes.
And I just kept, if you told me that you watered your plants, like we were celebrating that. Do you know what I mean? Like my plants keep dying and they've been dying for 30 years. And then, because I worked with seniors, and then they would talk about, like, you know what, I'm this one's doing well, or I've gotten back to walking. Simple habits, right? When we're coping in survival ways rather than thriving ways, our health habits go out the window.
Yeah.
And I think that society was so busy fixing things rather than looking at the whole big picture is probably why I got into coaching and out of social work. So I was like, I can't work with these people who don't want it for themselves. I can listen, but then I would find that the same thing was happening, patterns, like every month. So and so would end up back in my office and we'd have the same conversation. But there was also elements of, memory changes and transitions and stuff with people in later life. I was also dealing a lot with caregivers. And the number one thing I realized about caregiving, whether you're a mom or you're looking after, say, an older parent, you are putting yourself last.
Correct.
And in any relationship, you can have resentment show up with that, as you know, as a relationship coach, right? When resentment kicks in and you're caregiving for someone, and I mean, I was starting to feel burnt out because, and to do with a number of things, but I went through postpartum depression. And when you're a caregiver, all you think about is, how much work it is, and it's for the other person, but you're losing yourself in the process.
Correct.
And it can be really damaging because that affects your whole health. So when I have people come to me, we end up having a conversation about things like I mentioned about the vacuum, or the things that, like, the ADHD weird things. But then when we break it down, we're looking at kind of like that overall, like, how are you coping with your health? How are you coping in your relationships? And transforming it from a foundational perspective. And also building your confidence little by little. And the way that we build our confidence is we can stack our wins. I put my vacuum away, Kim. I'm giving myself a pat on the back for that, because you know what? That was needing to happen. Or I need to clean out my garage and get ready for winter,
Yeah.
You got to make time for that. Well, that's the other thing, is we're not really fully organized in our calendar. So then we're playing catch up in last minute. We're not proactively looking at, okay, well, yeah, if I got to do my garage and it's going to take me 2-3 hours, realistically, may even take longer.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't be scrolling Instagram recipes for 3 hours on Sunday. I should probably make the brownies and then move on. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. And I mean, it's so easy. It's common. We know it happens. All right. It does.
Totally. But when it's a pattern that goes on for women, and men too, I've worked with men too, but when it goes on for women for decades, it's really hard to feel confident in your abilities, because that's your pattern.
Exactly.
And people are used to you saying, I'm sorry, I'm late. People are used to you forgetting to send them a birthday card.
Right.
And so you're teaching people how to treat you back when you're not owning what you're doing yourself.
That's a big one. Owning what you are doing yourself. Exactly. And just kind of to touch on some of the points that you raised just now. You talked about constantly putting yourself last, and then the resentment that builds up with it. And I think that's a very important point to look at as well, especially when I'm trying to balance all of these things: being a mom, being a business owner, being a wife, being, like you said, in many cases, depending on your age group, being a caretaker for older relatives. all these little pieces we put before ourselves and our own physical health, our own mental health, our own emotional health. And we keep doing it. Sometimes we get the gratification of a thank you, or I couldn't do this without you, and we start to put our worth in that a bit.
We do. Mm-hmm.
Bit by bit by bit, we start to get resentful. Why am I doing all of this and no one else is helping me? And we become a martyr, we become a victim, and that
Journey.
resentment starts to stack up. And one of the places we direct that resentment, because we say, well, our children need us, but one of the places where it's easy to target that resentment is our spouse.
Oh,
Because
yeah. Oh, I could talk for days about this. I'm sure my husband would pull up a chair and talk about this topic because, heck yeah, girl, 15 years we've been married.
been there, done that.
We've had to transform that part of our relationship for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And this is it. This is one of the things that we're not aware of as we're doing it. We're,
No,
we're far more conscious of the urgent things, the pressing things. But the reality is one day you're going to wake up and realize there is this wall that is there that you didn't realize had been slowly building up. And you're
totally. Hmm.
completely unaware.
And I love how you brought that up around your partner, your spouse, because if I can speak into that from just knowing my clients, but also for myself, how much of a sacrifice it is if you're in business as
Mm,
a spouse, and
yeah,
they have it has to be a family affair.
yeah,
And when it isn't, I have various people I've met with that it isn't supported.
yeah,
And that's challenging because I mean then they're pushing themselves to the limit with their business, and they feel like they're spinning their wheels, and they may even rock and roll their business. They may get it right off the ground and things happen and they're right on it. But yet things are crumbling outside the door of the
correct,
office.
correct.
The laundry is piled up, the kids are stuck on screens, they're, not engaging, they're just kind of checked out. They, are constantly on their phone, and I am totally guilty of being on my phone a lot. And it's interesting, I'll share this one hack that I do with my kids.
Mm,
We don't need it now, but we did at one point where I said, you guys get to have a word that you say to me. Like, so say if my daughter needs help with something and I'm like, yep, just a minute.
yeah,
5 minutes has gone by.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then 20 minutes has gone by. And then they're starting to feel like you just not listening to me, mom. I
yeah,
said, you get to come and you say the word, and we have our word. And as soon as she says that, I have 30 seconds to put down my phone, or she comes and grabs my phone. And we've made that rule in our house, and it's actually, we've only had to use it a few times, but it's
mm,
enough of a wake up call for me. Like, holy
mhm,
heck. Different
mhm.
if I'm in a podcast, different if I'm in a coaching session. And yes, I've had my kids and my dog absolutely like straight up come in, but that's life.
It really
I'm
is.
sure you have the same, right? Like you just
Like, so,
legit do your thing. I mean, it's different when you're working from home because I mean, if I was at an office place, my kid's not coming to interrupt me in the middle
no,
of my day.
exactly.
And we had to adapt as an entire world with all of a sudden working from home. And we haven't really even thought about what that has done to our kids,
Yeah,
let
exactly.
alone like there's so many elements to that. And I don't want to get off track, but what I'm saying is
Mhm.
when when you're thinking about how it's affecting your family, running your business, you do have to have that conversation and constantly have it around this is the reason I'm doing this.
Correct.
Anchor into that why. Know what your values are. Know
Exactly.
what your like turn your darn phone off on certain parts of the weekend or day, and have those non-negotiables in place. And I mean, my kids are elite cheer athletes, and that is an expense. It's a sacrifice. It's a time crunch. It basically runs our life. And my kids know, okay, if I'm like, okay, who's on dog poo pickup? We do it. Like, they don't ask. They're just like, yeah, no, it's, and they'll squabble over it for a bit, just being sisters.
Yeah.
Or if I'm like, the chores, like, I have been delegating to my kids chores for years. And here's why I had to. It's because I lived in postpartum depression. And when my youngest was a year old, my oldest was 5. So they're 4 years apart, and she had to grow up real fast. And then throw in COVID, she grew up extra fast. And I'm not super proud of it, but I also am grateful because now she knows how to make lunches. She knows how to tidy up the house. Like my daughter at 8 and 9 years old, when I was homeschooling my kids in lockdowns and doing a mastery certification and coaching with my business, you can imagine how much time I had for them. And with homeschooling, it was very hard. Like, she learned, hey, if I'm going to have lunch, I better make it because mom's not leaving her office. And I eventually had to swallow it and just be like, I'm sorry. And Cassie, she would just come up, she would give me soup and sandwich. That was her thing. And then talk about a confidence builder. She learned, like, that's okay. And then I learned that's okay. Like, my kids started doing laundry. It's like, hey, just put the clothes in the wash from the washer into the dryer, and they wanted to help out.
Yeah.
My youngest this year was thrilled because she could mow the lawn.
Oh, wow.
And well, at that time she was 8. I think she started when she was 7. But it's kind of like a competition between her and her sister, like who could do it faster. And then, like, during lockdowns, I came up with this fun idea. It was like, who can sort the laundry the fastest? And so I had a time clock. This is where ADHD comes in real handy. I had a chart, and I was like taking notes, and I'm like, who can do the darks the fastest? And who could do the whites the fastest? And like, we had like races going on. And then it was like, who can get it in the laundry like quickest? And we had a chart this summer of kind of their bucket list things they wanted to do.
Right.
And I think we checked off all of 2. And there was about, 12 things on there.
Right.
So a family affair, the reason we're able to do what we're able to do is because everyone pulls their weight.
Yeah.
We're delegating to each other. And my husband is a champion that way because he not only, listens to the chaos that is running a business starting from scratch, but he's supportive. He knows how to throw a crock pot meal together. He cooks quite a bit. He'll do the dishes. He'll help with laundry. And he's sitting watching hockey anyway. We have this rules, like whoever's sitting watching TV, do some laundry.
Right.
You put some non-negotiables in place and things start to flow. And I think that everyone has their own systems, but you have to have systems.
Yeah. Exactly. You have to figure out which ones are going to work for you. Not just because it works for Erin, is it going to work for you? But you look at what needs to get done. You look at your times and
I was on a couple calls yesterday with people just interested in coaching, and it was like, okay, let's map out a system. Like, let's figure this out. It has to do with meal planning. One has to do with self-care. Even 15 minutes extra for you in the morning. What could that look like?
Yeah.
And that's one thing I really love doing is helping women, map out how they can automate their life better, how they can delegate, give them the confidence to be able to ask.
Yeah.
But then also not just organize for the sake of organizing, but how to organize it so that you create systems that everyone can be involved in and you're enrolling them in that vision.
Exactly.
And with I would love to know just from a perspective with you as a relationship coach. So how do you, is it mostly around marriages or is it around full family relationships?
But mostly around marriages, but then full family relationships do come into it because very often some of the tensions that are caused between the spouses have to do with the kids. Um, whether there are, what's whether there's stepkids involved
Yep.
or not, because we come from so very different backgrounds, right? That raising kids brings up a whole lot of issues.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, one of the things that I think this is one of the reasons why I got into this as well. You talked about that aspect around running your own business and the impact that has on your family. And that was huge for me. And I struggled with that. Oh my gosh, so much in the first couple of years, especially. And I
Mhm.
remember being very resentful of my husband. And I didn't even realize I was being resentful of him, right?
Yeah.
Um, because, he has his own business. But here's the thing, he started his own business. I don't even think we were married yet. We would have been together, but it was just the two of us. Those were the days when, like, I remember I was wherever I was working. I finished work at 4, but some days I could leave at 10 minutes to 4, and he'd pick me up, and we lived close by. So by 4 p.m. we were back in bed having an afternoon nap. you know like,
Oh,
who?
the days of naps. Can you
Right.
imagine?
Exactly. And he started building a business at that point in our lives when
Got
there
it.
was nothing else going on. And now here I was trying to build a business in the middle of working a full-time job, him running his own business, us managing the lives and activities of 3 children,
Kids. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
you know? And suddenly I just wasn't available the way I used to be.
Yeah. I
And
thank you for sharing that. I was curious about how that all works for you. The one thing that our family did go through was when we started our family, we actually moved 3 provinces in 5 years, but I followed him because of his work. And
yeah.
then when he got laid off, he actually transitioned. It was a good thing, but at the time it was devastating because he got laid off and we actually had to move 3 provinces west, and took a massive pay cut while I was in university. And then I did university by correspondence, had to find my own practicum. And in social work, you don't get paid for anything. So you're paying to be a part of a program and working and school. And then I ended up pregnant, which was amazing. My daughter was born Christmas of 2011. And we moved back home to where, to Alberta, and that had been our plan. It just took us 5 years to go through 3 provinces, but I followed him. My point is, I followed him, and it was all about his career. So when my daughter was a baby, he was doing a designation, which is almost like a thesis on top of working full time. So he lived almost an hour and a half away doing that during the week. So
Mhm.
we did our sacrifice stuff in our marriage, I'll say,
Wow.
before we had kids and when my youngest was just little. But
Yeah.
those were hard years. And I think what happened is my husband saw, like, hey, it's now your time. 2019, here we go.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh.
So we make the sacrifices we have to for a reason. We do what we have to do because it's meant for your family's vision. And I would just say, if anyone's listening to, like, when you're hearing about this and thinking about this for your own business, or you're thinking about starting a business, really getting your family involved and enrolling them in that vision.
Correct. Exactly. So on that note, though, this is what Erin does. Okay. If you are a mom who's in business or wanting to start your own business and you feel like, how am I supposed to juggle all of the things? And I know my ADHD poses an extra challenge. Well, Erin is somebody that you want to connect with. So,
Thank you.
Erin, where can they find you?
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah, find me on Facebook. So Erin Vogt, VOGT. I run a Facebook group called Thriving ADHD Mompreneurs, and I'm on Instagram at Erin Coaches. My website, I don't know if people go to websites anymore, but my website is ADHDbusinessmoms.com. And I got a baby YouTube channel starting out. So I
Mhm.
like video and I'm getting my ducks in a row. So I'm one of those people you can message at any time. I live on Messenger and Facebook. If you have questions, if you want help with things, we can meet. I do a lot of consultations and complimentary stuff. I want you to have wins at the
Exactly.
end of the day. And I also want to help connect you in the business world because I'm a massive networker, as is Kim. So please get in touch with us, with me, whatever. And I'd be happy to support you in whatever way that could be.
Thank you very much. And yes, and when you find Erin on Facebook or Instagram or her website, don't forget to also find out about her 10 minutes to ADHD calm. Okay.
Yeah, I can give the quick note for that. So that's www.erinvogt.com/focus.
Perfect. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. So, this show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it.
Amazing.